How you doing today, Brian?
Hey, I'm good, Nick. It's another fun episode with our buddy Peter Margaritis, the accidental accountant, who's also the host of the podcast Change Your Mindset. And it's always a pleasure to have him along. He's a funny guy. He's a master of improv, and he's got a great sense of humor. So that gets infused with whatever conversation we always tend to have with him.
Yeah, it does. And we talked a little bit about leadership, and then we just kind of talked about, what's going on in the current day for us. We're recording this in April of 2020. 2021. So, it's a pandemic currently still, if someone's listening to this later, different point in time. We kind of talked a little bit about leadership, returning to the office, and just, the things we're looking forward to doing, once stuff's kind of back to normal.
Yeah, some of how you lead the different perceptions of how people feel about, whether or not safety is still something that's top of mind for them, if they feel more liberated now having vaccines, if they were never concerned about having it, and they just want things to get back to the way they were before. All of those things present a variety of leadership choices and challenges, as well as just kind of talking in general about, how does it affect the psychology of people who have been dealing with this, particularly for the past year or so. And there's a lot of laughs along the way for a subject matter that we just introduced, sounding quite as serious as it did. This is not a very serious episode in many ways.
No, and over the past couple of years, we've become pretty good friends with Peter as well. And we've made appearances on his podcast. He's been on ours a couple times, and it always turns into us joking and laughing at some point. So with that, I hope everyone enjoys it. It's a bit different of an episode than what we normally do. Hopefully it brings a smile to your face, and enjoy.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Lead.exe. I'm Brian Comerford in Denver, Colorado.
And I'm Nick Lozano in Washington, D.C.
And we're thankful to be joined today by the accidental accountant, Peter Margaritis, who's back for the third time, right? Is this your third time on the show?
I believe so. My first time solo.
First time solo. Wow. Is that right?
I don't think it's your first time solo. I actually think this is your fourth appearance.
Fourth appearance.
Right? I think.
That's why I can't. Numbers just freak me out. That's why I'm the accidental accountant. I can't keep track of this stuff. It's numbers based.
Well, clearly we're happy to have you back, no matter how many times it's been.
It's great to be back.
Accounting must not be, or at least number counting must not be a strong suit for any of us.
Is there another type of accounting that I'm not
aware of? Number counting must not be our strong suit.
You mean like Count Dracula, right? One.
Yeah, along those lines.
That's right. The count.
The count.
Today's program is sponsored by the number 3.
Good number. Easy to remember.
That's right. Oh my goodness. Well, Peter, you've got you're an author, you're a speaker, you're a podcaster, you are an improv. I don't know what to call you, a comic.
Virtuoso.
You're a jack of all trades, and hopefully a master of at least one of them, right?
Yes. And we'll go with the improv.
Well played. I love it. I see your yes and sign right behind you there. That's awesome.
Okay.
As we were talking a little bit at the beginning of the program, we're embarking on this unusual phase, which is strange to say, considering that we're just kind of returning to the way things used to be, with opening up, post-vaccination for many. There are some vaccination holdouts. Here we are in at the end of April 2021. We've got some folks who are excited at the promise of actually getting back into, more of a physically socialized kind of, community orientation. We've got other folks who are still kind of holed up and fearful. And as you just mentioned, you're feeling a bit like a dog because now you get to talk about having had your shots, right?
Have you guys had your shots?
I've had one.
I have. I had the Johnson & Johnson literally like 3 days before they shut it down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a pretty big dose. Like, I know I'm like, it's like, it was this big, but you know, when you think of like the flu shot where it's like that much, right? Like this was maybe like a little bit more.
So if he passes out during this episode, we know it's the J&J vaccine.
This episode's brought to you by Johnson.
And the number 3.
And the number 3. Don't forget the number 3.
That would be like the weirdest, you know, pre-roll add-in. It was like brought to you by the number 3 and some vaccine. Yeah.
It wouldn't be out of character for this crew though.
Good thing Nick's good at editing.
That's right.
I'm not going to edit any of this. What are you talking about?
That's right. The blooper roll's the main feature here.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, you know, it seemed like it took forever for me to even get the first shot. You know, I was on one of those early waiting lists. I turned 50 during the time, so I moved into a new category. I felt like at least that should, you know, accelerate my access to getting vaccinated, but it didn't. I got it at the same time as a bunch of other people much younger than me. But that first shot was it was kind of a doozy for me. I've heard from a lot of other folks that it's the second shot that's kind of intense for them.
So you had side effects after the first shot?
Yes, which is also an indicator that you've already had COVID.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say that, but you didn't know that you had it.
Well, I did. I suspected that I had it. I suspected that my entire family had it, but my test proved negative. So, you know, but of course, I've also heard that you get a lot of false positives with those. What do they call them? The rapid
tests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I went through the whole deal. I lost my taste for about 10 days and, you know, lost my smell. My wife still hasn't really gotten her smell back entirely. So we shall see.
That's the perfect time to go on a diet when you lose your taste and your smell. You're like, it doesn't matter. Can't taste anything. So it's as healthy as possibly as we can because it's not going to matter.
The problem was then I just started drinking heavily because at least with liquor, I could feel the effects of something.
Did you feel the burn as it was going down?
He's like, that's some good
That's
stuff.
right. It's like, I couldn't taste that, but I'm definitely intoxicated.
Perfect.
So was it one of those instances where like you know, like you go out to drink and you're sitting at the bar and you're in a chair and you're like, I'm fine. And then you stand up and you're like, oh, I am not fine.
Raise your hand if that's ever happened to you.
That's right.
Raising both hands. Right?
You know,
so
sorry, I was going to say it's almost like that, except I have not been at a bar. I can't think of the last time that I've been to a bar, to be completely honest.
No,
yeah, that's
likewise.
Too close. That's too many people in close quarters. I'm still a little leery about a bunch of people in a room together without at least some type of decent social distancing. I'm still a little leery about that aspect of it.
So that's a good point, like for us to bring into this, right? We're talking about people coming back to the office, right? Leadership in all organizations have to make tough decisions, and fear is relative to each person, right? Maybe I've got the vaccine. I'm not afraid to come in, be around 50 people, but you might have other people who don't want to get the vaccine, don't want to come in, saying, hey, I've been working from home for a year. It's been working great. So leadership has this tough dichotomy that they got to deal with. So from your viewpoint, what should they be thinking about as they're grappling with these tough situations to be a leader, but still kind of make the right decisions from an organizational perspective?
Actually, I just read an article in Harvard Business Review this past week about psychological safety in this soon-to-be post-COVID world. And psychological safety is the ability that people that work with you, for you, how you want to do it, they have the freedom to express their own opinions without any persecution or anything like that. They're willing to take risks, and it's very collaborative. And they said, now, leadership in this virtual world, there were stories of, hey, we're all back in the office now. I'd love to have you back. It's almost like that guilt shaming aspect going on. And I guess to kind of summarize the article, it's a la carte. It's what's comfortable for the person, not what's comfortable for the organization. And I know a number of people who have said they don't want to go back to the office. Now, I know a lot of introverts, and they're very, but even some of the extroverts that I know are saying, no, this has been fine. This has been fine. And others have said, I'm there. I got to get out of this house. The 5 kids, and it's like the Wizard of Oz, and the monkeys are flying around. I just got to get out.
Get me out of here.
Get me out of here. But I think leadership should really look at this as what's best for the employee. When it's what's best for the organization, I kind of wonder, well, what's the underscore there? And I think it goes to the trust factor. Most organizations don't trust their employees because they said this would never work virtually. This would never work virtually. March 15 came, we're going virtual. And they found out that this actually can work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I like that you say that too, because the main point you always hear too recently, and I'm not a fan of, is like you'll hear organizations say, well, we pay for this office space. We'd like to fill it with people. I'm like, well, you'd be paying for it anyways because you signed a 10-year lease. So that's like a moot point, in my opinion. It's like it would have happened regardless. Maybe you shouldn't have done a 10-year lease, Yeah. So I like that you brought it back to, you need to think of leading your people and not think of, it's not always about the organizational perspective. Sometimes the right thing to do is the right thing to do with people in mind instead of, worrying about filling that space that you're paying for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's been interesting too that, I think there's a flip side to the argument, right? Which is when you have closer proximity where I can just get up and walk, to get a, glass of water or a cup of coffee or whatever. And I pass by Peter's desk and, we sit there and we chat for a few minutes, and maybe I'm talking about a project that I'm involved in and say something to the effect of, oh yeah, I've been working on some other similar thing. And I just thought about this, and you've got all that sort of natural conversation that takes place outside of the context, excuse me, of the actual, work teams that are assigned to a project. And so that water cooler talk, right? That community kind of aspect that's been absent for so many of us because it's not really happening on Zoom. You end up on a video conference for an explicit purpose versus, just chit chatting normally.
It was Yahoo that I can't remember the CEO who came in as female, and a lot of Yahoo at the time was working remotely. And he flipped the switch.
That's Marissa Mayer. I know. It's Marissa Mayer. Yep.
Thank you. And
go ahead,
everybody had to come back into the office. And there was a reason why, to that point. There's a lot of creativity. There's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of stuff that we can do when we're face-to-face with folks versus virtually. But I don't know, I think this is Google. I might be wrong, but it's one of the tech giants that they have a cafeteria where everybody can eat, and they want people to eat there. And then they have the Hogwarts tables that are just like long. You don't have these little small tables, and people sit. And from stories I've heard and read about that, when people are standing there in line, they're actually serving the food slow for that conversation between employees. And that's why they don't have like little rounds, tables of 4 or rounds of 8, these long tables. So a lot of conversation can happen, and that collaboration, that creativity can kick in. So that is the flip side of being in an office.
Mm-hmm. That way I could be standing in line next to Nick and I could be like, man, have you ever noticed how slow the service is here? It's so frustrating.
I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I thought I was going to get an arrow. I thought he was going to say, Nick, do you ever realize how slow you are at your job?
You're like this line.
But I like that. Yeah, exactly. You bring up a great point, Brian. And I just saw recently Atlassian has decided that their staff only has to come into work 4 times a year, and they don't care where you live.
Right.
You just got to be able to come into the office 4 times a year, and that's it. And they're going to go ahead with that and see how it works, because their CEO was like, hey, that's what I did this past year, and the team morale's never been higher. We're going to run with it and see how it works. So I think that's also a neat perspective. We're starting to see different things come out of the woodwork as people are kind of getting back to normal.
Yeah. Go ahead, Peter.
I know an association that I'm involved with has decided that they're going to maintain and work remotely, and they had a piece of real estate and they sold it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've known a couple of different organizations that have done that, and they were not tech organizations. They were organizations that were more traditional businesses, and they consolidated some of their real estate holdings, and same kind of thing. It's like, well, if there was ever a proof point for what remote work and productivity can mean for an organization, here it was. And our employees are more satisfied. Actually, we've got greater diversity in our hiring reach, because now we can hire people not based on geographic placement, but based on their skill set and based on allowing them to live where they want to live. And we can harness their talent from, wherever they're geographically located. So I think there's been a lot of forward thinking, maybe not even forward thinking. It's just like affirmation of a lot of the arguments that had been put in place in favor of remote work prior to the pandemic. And now we've had this actual use case that's been global in scope. That's sort of reinforced what a lot of those proof points are. So it's almost an interesting question to me. Why wouldn't companies embrace it? Because there are certainly some that are not.
I still think it goes back to the trust factor. How well do you trust your employees that they're going to get the work done? And for a good amount of time, we always blame that generation that has an M in it. I just call it a younger generation, because I think that word has become toxic, and it's also very untrue and very unfair.
Yeah.
But
that's true, because we all know it's actually Gen Y. It's not.
That's right.
Let's be fair. People use the word millennials just to describe anyone who's a recent college graduate, I feel like, or recent high school graduate, without respect of what generation they're in. I feel like that's how people use the term.
Mm-hmm.
And my son's part of that new generation, Gen Z, but he's taken to a whole new level as Gen Z.
Then are you Generation Stick? You take the stick and you poke them. Okay, wake up.
And I can use that stick to walk down the hall with me. We call it a cane.
Well, back to my point about some companies are not embracing that. I know a couple of people recently who chose to leave their jobs, and I've actually seen some survey results of this, from a few different organizations that have talked about actually, all of what has happened with remote work has allowed for increasing diversity, increasing employee satisfaction, increasing, placement of talent. And then conversely, you've got some companies that are saying, yeah, but we're still going to have a mandate that, whether it's the entire office or certain teams or whatever, people are coming back into the office. And some of those survey results have also indicated that people are more willing to just uproot themselves from whatever their current work situation is, if that's the mandate, and go find work someplace that's going to be more flexible for them.
I would if I were them. If I wouldn't come into the office, and I'm being told that I say, hey, when people tell me what to do, I tend to do the opposite. But because you're making me do something that I don't want to do, but I've been productive for the last year, so now I'm a little disgruntled, and the organization should know that anybody that you're forcing, they've got the resume out there. It's called LinkedIn, and they're looking for the job. And so you can't complain about the turnover. It's about decision making.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Nick? You love being told what to do.
Of course, always. No, I think with anything else, it just boils back down to what Peter was talking about. It's trust, right? Like people, I feel like there was always this stigma of working from home where people are like, oh, they put you at home, you're just going to waste time. Well, newsflash, you can waste time in the office. People do it all the time. You don't have to be at home to do that, right? I mean, how many times have you or somebody worked in an organization and you know when it's happening, right? Because you can tell. You should just trust people to get the stuff done, and then it's not about gathering these metrics and seeing how long somebody's online and whether they're productive or not. To me, the factors is work getting done, or are people complaining that assignments aren't being turned in or something? It's real easy to tell when work's not being completed. So for me, it just goes back to the whole thing, trust with Peter. And, you know, if you want to force all your employees to come in, they're going to look for those other jobs. Like he was just talking about that association who got rid of their office space. Well, now they don't have office space, and maybe someone else is looking for a job. Hey, all remote. You know, it broadens their talent pool for them nationwide or even worldwide, depending on, you know, their financial situation. I think it just all goes back to trust, like Peter said.
But there is one group that can have top of my head that have to at least report to the office or the restaurant. There's those different industries that I can't work remotely if I'm part of the front line of a restaurant or airline industry, but those other industries that have the corporate towers and stuff that they need people to or those who manufacture would still have to come in. But there's part of that other workforce that still could work remotely that you wouldn't have to require them to be in.
Yeah, it's hard to be a mechanic and not be in the shop.
Grab that wrench. yeah, that one right there, and go turn it.
Your flux capacitor is not pushing 1.12 gigawatts.
Well, it's true, and it's not just relegated to the workplace. You know, think of how many things have been work-related activities. So part of what we started off the show with, Peter, was you're talking about here you are, you know, getting ready to go be a guest speaker in front of a room full of people, like actual physical people in a physical location. That's something that, you know, whether it's, you know, industry conferences or, you know, leadership retreats or any number of these things that are often ancillary to work that's being done, still have involved, you know, physical location and close proximity to other people. And so now we're also at a turning point where we're starting to see some of that kind of reemerge. And I'm sure it won't be 100%. There have now been some paths carved on directions that some of those things will go, where actually, you know, it's superior to have remote content for some of those things that used to involve, you know, direct community engagement.
I think initially this thing I'm doing is for an association. It's a staff appreciation luncheon. They do it annually. And normally they have like 120, 150 people there. They found a venue that holds 300, and they're saying they hope they get 100 people there. So it may be, you know, not 8 to a table, 6 to a table, and I will be there with my arrow, keeping people away from me, going back. You know. And I accept it because there's a side of me that wants to go back to the stage like that, but there's also a side of me that says I'm still going to do virtual presentations. I'm traveling. I'm in a car to Dayton, Ohio. I've got another live event in November, and I'm traveling. That will probably have to require me to be in an airplane going to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I stayed in hotels during this pandemic. I've yet to go on an airplane. And that's probably my biggest angst is being on an airplane because the social distance is out the door.
Yeah.
I think beginning now.
Yeah, I've noticed that the, you know, airfares have shot right back up to where they were pre-pandemic, which is interesting. You'd think there'd still be some ramp up time, but if the prices have already raised that much, that means the demand is in place.
Right.
Either that or a cut in supply, right? One of the two.
Yeah. So I'm not sure about getting on an airplane. So my original idea during the pandemic is as long as I can drive it in under 8 hours, I'm good. I get there, sleep tonight, get up the next morning, do it, come back. But there's a side I'm kind of excited, but I'm also kind of a little bit leery. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I always get a case of nerves before I speak, but I think I'm gonna have a whole new case of nerves.
Mhm.
When the first time that after I got my first shot, I said, okay, I'm actually going to go into a restaurant. I haven't been into a restaurant in about a year. And I met a buddy of mine, and I was expecting to walk in this restaurant and there would be maybe 4 tables. I walked in and the place was almost packed. And I stopped and went, just no, you're not leaving. You're going to do this. You're going to sit down. You're going to have lunch. Everything's going to be fine. And if you get COVID, you've got some protection.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was just speaking with a client yesterday, and she mentioned that after she got her first shot, it was almost like there was this psychological reaction that she didn't, it took her a few times to even recognize that it was happening. But she would get in her car to go to the store, and she wouldn't even take a mask with her. And she'd get to the store and she'd realize, oh, I didn't bring a mask, or she'd just any of these things that, now we've sort of been attenuated to the idea that, well, we've always got to have, these additional things, for going outside. And it's almost like having at least, half of the recommended dose has gotten you to a place where psychologically you're feeling enough relief. You find that to be true?
I leave masks behind all the time in my car. I get almost, I'm like, I got to walk back and put it on. It just,
Yeah.
But I didn't do that before vaccination. I did that then.
Interesting.
I did that all the time. Wash them in my pocket, my jeans pocket, something, because I have it in my back pocket. Find it in the washing machine.
Was that with a mask that was washable?
Yeah. It wasn't with the medical grade ones. I did, I do woodworking, so I have like an actual HEPA filter, like, so many micron mask, but then I would look like Darth Vader walking around everywhere. It's like, and I doubt I can get replacement filters for it right now. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I know you'll find this really hard to believe, guys, but my mask came from Maker's Mark, and it had a filter in it.
wow.
It wasn't charcoal. it wasn't an oak barrel filter, but there was this filter in it, and it's one of the few masks that I've worn that had that extra layer of protection, because they want their drinkers to continually to drink, so they'll make sure they're going to take care of them.
So does it have a slot where you can slip a straw in when you want to get the makers in? It's like
that's when it was a really, really, really rough day. if I'm putting a straw into a bottle of Makers.
It's like the beer hat, but it's just the two bottles of Makers.
Oh my goodness. Well, if you're feeling nervous about getting back on a plane, Peter, you're opposed to being shot out of a cannon.
Oh, I don't mind that.
As long as you got a crash helmet and a parachute.
Yeah, a crash helmet, parachute, and a net. Yeah.
In Tulsa.
Yeah, Tulsa. Yeah, I may have to figure out the mileage and how long it take and to drive out there. I don't know. I'll see how I feel once I get towards October. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be October before you know it too.
It's true.
Hey, wait a minute. We're just now getting into spring of some type. Don't rush us to fall.
Yeah, no. Well, it's still March 5,000 of 2020, so it's fine.
Yeah. And I think today is Blur's Day.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. All the days are the same right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So what about you guys? I don't remember if you both worked. No, you both didn't work remotely prior to the pandemic, did you?
I just started
did it.
a remote.
Brian was 3 months in, something like that.
I was 6 weeks in. I had just hit my 6th week of working remote, and it was like, this is great. Finally got my home office set up, exactly the way that it'd be optimized, so I could do this long term. And little did I know that I wasn't going to have an alternative. And that everyone else would be joining me too,
Oh yeah.
I mean, it really made me feel like a trailblazer, to be completely honest.
those FTEs that live in your office space. I mean, the 2 FTEs I have in my house, I put them on warning. I've threatened to fire them. I've threatened to kick them out. Threatened to change the locks, but they still keep hanging around.
Yeah, we kind of divvied things up because my wife was also a work from home worker. And so she, we had already structured it so that she was in the office on our the second floor of our 2-story. I was in the basement. And then we had, kind of the common area was the, the middle level where we could meet in the kitchen for coffee. And then that became the de facto location for my son when suddenly he was, schooling from home, because it just became too much. We've got another desk, in my office space where he would typically be set up for his, his gaming, his Alienware and stuff. And, but, previously that had never been something that he would ever get into unless it was after hours, after school or weekends or whatever. But now it was like, that was the main place. And it was just too much for both of us to be sitting 8 feet away from each other. And so the dining room table has become his desk and his office.
So I have an office on the second floor. We have 3-story. I have an office on the second floor, and I'm in the basement. And when my wife retired the first time, she took my office. How does this work? I don't know. It just happens, doesn't it?
Yeah, see, the office it hadn't been up for grabs for me since my wife started working from home. So I was there weren't many choices left for me. You're gonna work from home, buddy. You get to saddle up next to the utility room.
Yay, me!
Nick always knows when I've got laundry running because he's like, "Oh, there's the dryer in the background." That's right.
Well, Nick did say that he finds masks in his laundry. So, do you do your own laundry, Nick?
Yeah, I do sometimes.
Cool. I do too.
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I don't sort anything though. I'm just like, yep, this all goes in.
Right?
That's
and my
right.
wife
This is
will
what
be
cold
that says
water's
dry clean
for.
only. My wife will go, that says dry clean. I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. Just put it in.
That's right.
Yeah.
It'll dry and it'll be clean.
It'll wash. Yeah.
That's dry cleaning. But isn't that an oxymoron, dry cleaning? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense.
Fresh frozen.
Yeah, fresh frozen.
Central Intelligence.
I have heard that they have a hot dog machine at the CIA headquarters. They have 2 of them. And you can get a fresh hot dog out of a machine. It's like folklore around here. Yeah.
Wow.
Fresh hot dog out of a vending machine?
Yeah,
right.
it's like it cooks the hot dog somehow. Like it's a hot dog vending machine.
Oh.
Yeah.
So are there any pictures of this thing?
I was just going to say, I want to see one of your next LinkedIn videos to be a post of you seeking out the hot dog vending machine. Next.
I don't think I can get anywhere near that place with a video camera.
Well, that can't be the only 2 in the world.
No, I think there's more somewhere else. Somebody had told me that they had seen one at South by Southwest one time. So it is a thing. I think it's just that there happens to be a couple in the CIA building, that are there. And whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I've heard from multiple people that there's hot dog machines in there. So it kind of makes me want a government hot dog from a vending machine. I don't know why. It's kind of like going to a baseball game and getting a cold hot dog and a hot beer,
This is part of what I love about getting the 3 of us together. we can make these leaps in our topics so easily.
Yeah.
As my wife would say, you're a fountain of useless information.
And you're like, well, that's why I have a podcast and a radio show.
That's right. That's right.
Because I can talk forever.
And on and on and on.
It's true.
So I have a question for you too. Once we're, let's say, back to this new normal, whatever that is, and people can remove masks, don't have to wear them indoors. We got herd immunity or almost herd immunity. What's the one thing that you want to do that you haven't been able to do in, let's say, 18 months? What's the first thing you're going to do?
You go first, Brian.
Oh man. Well, I would love to go to a movie theater. That's something that my family, we would go to a couple movies a month. We just enjoy. Part of what I love about seeing a film in a theater is you can't hit pause. You have to be quiet. It forces you to be focused on what's going on. And so, particularly when a film's well done, it really allows you to get lost in that world for just that brief period of time. But all that goes away when you're, no longer, bound by any of those constraints, So that's something that I look forward to. It's a guilty pleasure. It's a small one, but yeah, I can't wait to do that.
It's a good one, Brian. I think for me, it's going to be taking our son to Disney World. We wanted to do that in the summertime before the pandemic hit. So we want to do that in the summer of 2020. He's like the right age for it. So it's like one of the things is we've been wanting to take him to do, because now he's at the age, he's 5. So he knows the characters. He's interested in everything, can remember storylines. So we thought it was going to be a perfect time to take him to like a Disney World. And that would probably be one of the first things we do.
Bring a big, big, big wallet with you.
Yeah, it was a big one. Well, I mean, I already live in an expensive city, so the sticker shock doesn't surprise me quite as much. But I'm not saying
I've got all the techniques for doing it on the cheap, man. We'll talk previous to your Disneyland trip, okay?
Brian's like, take him to downtown Disney, so he doesn't realize he's at Disney. He's not at Disney. Yeah. A Camelback, is that what you said?
Yes. Start with the Camelback. Load it up with your meals. You're good for the entire day.
Like a smoothie and a Camelback?
No.
Are you talking about the backpack?
Yeah, the Camelback backpack. That's got the water bladder in it. Yeah. You'll be in good shape.
Put your maker's mark in it, right?
Yeah, put your beer in it, beer bladder.
That's true. Yeah, you could do a blend.
Beer on whiskey, always risky.
That's right.
I mean, you could put Michelob Ultra in there. It's basically water, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter, how about you? What are you most looking forward to?
Going to a sporting event.
Mm-hmm.
Going to a baseball game. I still want to go, and I might still do it, even though that limited attendance. But I miss going to baseball games. I love baseball. I can't really watch it on TV, but to sit there and have what would you say, Nick, a hot beer and a cold hot dog?
Yep.
And just with a couple friends, and you're having conversation, you're watching, it's fun, and I love that. I love that experience. I live between Cleveland and Cincinnati, and they're both about the same amount of time to get to the park. I miss baseball games. I used to live in Cleveland, and when I was going through my divorce with the first Mrs. Margaritis, I would go. And this was at Brown Stadium, where the Indians played, and you maybe get 1,000 people in there, and I would go consistently and sit and watch the game, have a couple hot dogs, have a couple beers. Go, oh, this is perfect. Yeah.
It's interesting. I heard recently that they're not going to be bringing back the Barkers for the summer season. The guys that'll walk up and down the stairs and call out cold beer, right? Beer. And do all their stories and all of the all the various things.
So they're just not going to do it this year. They'll do it maybe in 2022.
Probably. I know what they're doing here for the Nationals here in DC. Everything's mobile ordering, and none of the concessions are open. So you order it all through an app, and they just bring it to you. Because they're trying to limit, when you go to the baseball game, the people congregating at the condiment thing when you get your hot dog and you put your onions and all that stuff on it. So everything just comes to you instead of you going anywhere.
Nice.
So there, it's free table service basically. You don't even have to go in there. You don't even have to stand in line anymore and miss a game. You just put your order in and sit there.
Wow, I like that idea. But you put your order in, how long does it take to it's delivered to you?
I have no idea. Here, the Nationals, like, they're doing a 10,000 fan limit, I think. So I mean, it can't take that long, I imagine.
Yeah.
And then also, you don't have a choice, right? Right. So if it takes a half an hour, it takes a half an hour. Yeah.
Oh, cool. That's interesting. Why did we just have all this dead air for a second?
I don't know. Who knows? I think we were just all thinking about doing stuff outside of just sitting in our house, right?
Yeah.
I was just trying to think about, when I go to baseball games, do I actually, watch the baseball game? Usually that's not the first order of business for me. It's more of a social experience.
Absolutely. I was Rocky's in Denver at Rocky's game. I think it was 2019. Nice park. It's not a mile high from what I've heard. But we were up in one of those suites.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you get lost
Oh yeah.
not being into the game.
Yeah.
Like all the socialization, and that truly is like second nature at that point in time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been up in some of those. There's also the whole, I don't even know what it's called, the Rockies, whatever, VIP section. That's all glassed in, so you can't even smell the popcorn or anything. And they've got like a gourmet buffet there. To me, which is like, oh wait, there's baseball here.
Yeah, when you can't hear the crack of the bat, that's a problem.
Right. Exactly.
Which you're going to hear that a lot in Colorado because they hit a lot of home runs there. That thin air, just crack of the bat. Yep.
Yes, indeed.
Crack of the bat, Cracker Jack, 7th inning stretch.
I'm gonna take that as a sound sample now and just play it in our crack of the bat, Cracker Jack.
That's right. That'll entice folks to listen. Like, oh, this is the podcast I've been waiting for.
Yeah, this is all about leadership. Remember, this is about leadership,
technology. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm getting it.
Yeah. We squeezed it in there.
Well, I'll be anxious to get back on a plane to do some international travel as well. And right now, with what's going on in many different parts of the world, it's still not looking promising. My family, we usually go to Thailand every other summer, and we skipped it last summer. Now is definitely not going to be a time to go. They're seeing another spike in numbers, and you're seeing it across Asia and back in parts of Europe. So it's kind of back to one of your earlier comments, Peter. I mean, it's not like this has somehow been centralized in America where our liberties have been impeded. It's been a global crisis where there's pretty much not a country, that you can talk about that hasn't been directly affected by this.
Right. But it's interesting how New Zealand and Australia attacked the pandemic versus other countries around the world. Guys I know actually moved his family back to Australia, and he goes, it was really weird. They got there off the plane, got their bags, they got on these buses, they had to stay in a hotel. It wasn't like a Red Roof Inn for 2 weeks, and then they got to check out, and when they get sick, and they got another test, and it was really weird that when we walked out, we didn't have to wear a mask, and nobody else was wearing masks, and it kind of was freaky. And if you watch the Australian Open, somebody came down, had COVID, and they shut the tennis down. So no more fans for 48 hours, whatever, centralized it, and then off it went. Versus other countries,
Yes,
they're taking different approaches.
Yeah. Well, as with many things in leadership, it all comes down to mindset, doesn't it?
Absolutely, it does. It comes down to one's mindset or faculties.
Yes. Which is probably a good place to wrap things for today, right? And since we didn't get to reference a media source, we might as well reference your own podcast, Peter.
Well, thank you for the plug. My podcast is Change Your Mindset. Nice segue.
That's right. Well, Peter Margaritis, it's always a great time with you. Thank you so much for joining us again. I'm glad to see you healthy and well and smiling and sporting your your brand enabled gear there.
Yes, my White Castle
That's right.
pullover. Hey, and thanks for having me back, guys. I always love the conversations and stuff. And I have to get you both back on my podcast for some. What was that extra useless information or something like that?
Fountain of useless information. That's right.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. I'll be ready to bring it.
I'll bring it large. That's what we say in the nursing home. Bring it large. No, bring Marge, not large.
All right. Thank you, Peter. Great to see you.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
You can flip that out, guys.